King Charles III has just completed one of the most watched and arguably most consequential state visits to Washington in a generation. Addressing Congress, dining with Trump at the White House, and delivering jokes sharp enough to cut through the diplomatic formality of a room full of senators and representatives. But beneath the wit and the pageantry, there were serious signals being sent about Iran, about the future of the special relationship, and about where Western power is actually headed. Joining me now are Marcus Webb, our defense and security analyst, and Sophia Reeves, our economics and markets editor. Marcus, let me start with you. Was this visit more than theater, or is the special relationship still running on nostalgia and goodwill rather than genuine strategic substance?
Thanks, Emma. Look, I'll tell you what this visit was. It was a reminder that when two nations with genuine civilizational roots and genuine strategic interests get in the same room, the results are completely different from the performative multilateralism we get at the G7 or the UN. Charles addressed a joint session of Congress. He talked about the alliance as one of the most consequential in human history, and he's right. This isn't sentiment, this is the backbone of Western security. What I found most revealing was Trump raising Iran at the state dinner toast. You don't do that by accident. That was a signal to Tehran, to NATO allies, to anyone watching, that the two most powerful English-speaking nations on Earth are aligned on the most dangerous nuclear proliferation question of our time. Douglas Murray has been saying for years that the West needs to defend its interests with confidence rather than apology, and that's exactly what we saw in Washington this week. My only concern, and I'll come back to this, is whether private alignment translates into public policy before Iran's window closes.
But Marcus, isn't there a risk that you're reading too much into what was, frankly, a heavily choreographed piece of royal diplomacy? The king cracked jokes about speaking French, he gave Trump a bell with a pun about giving us a ring. This could just as easily be very expensive, very well-produced, soft power, with no hard strategic follow-through whatsoever. And Sophia, what's your take on this? Particularly from an economic angle, because a US-UK trade deal has been imminent for about 9 years now?
Well, look, Marcus isn't wrong about the symbolism mattering, but here's what I think Marcus is missing. Symbolism without a trade deal is just very expensive theater. And I mean that seriously. The bilateral trading relationship between the US and the UK runs into hundreds of billions annually. They are each other's largest foreign investors, and yet we still don't have a comprehensive free trade agreement. Post-Brexit, Britain was supposed to unlock exactly this. Nigel Farage built a significant part of his political career on the promise that leaving the EU meant Britain could finally sign the big Anglosphere deals. And yet here we are. Charles is making jokes in the White House, and the trade deal is still sitting in procedural purgatory. If this visit doesn't produce serious movement on a US-UK FTA, then I'd argue the strategic substance Marcus is pointing to is running on borrowed credibility.
I hear what Sophia is saying, but with respect, that misses the point entirely on the security dimension. You cannot reduce the special relationship to a trade deal timeline. Iran has a nuclear program. That is the conversation that matters right now. Trump publicly stated that Charles agreed with his position on Tehran's weapons capability. Whether or not Sophia gets her free trade framework, the question of whether a nuclear-armed Iran destabilizes the entire Middle East and triggers a proliferation cascade across Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey, that is what keeps people in the intelligence community awake at night. And if Britain is not locked in, publicly and unambiguously, as an American partner on that question before the window closes, then no amount of trade agreements will matter because the region will be unrecognizable.
Here's what I want to know, and this is the question I don't think anyone in the mainstream media is asking loudly enough. In 6 months' time, is the special relationship measurably stronger, or does this go down as another beautifully catered dinner that produced nothing you could point to on a map? Sophia, where do you see this going?
The way I see this playing out, there are really two tracks running simultaneously. On the economic track, if the Trump administration is serious about rewarding allies, and Trump has shown he responds to personal relationships in a way that career diplomats don't always understand, then Charles's obvious chemistry with Trump could actually move the needle on trade in a way that years of formal negotiation haven't. The data supports this being a real opportunity. But if the Starmer government in London fumbles the follow-through, and let's be honest, Keir Starmer's instincts are not exactly Thatcherite, then this warm glow fades by autumn, and we're back to square one. The trajectory suggests the opportunity is real, but the political will on the British side is the weakest link.
Here's what concerns me most, and this is the Falklands angle that National Review has raised and almost nobody else is covering. Trump has been publicly unpredictable on territorial questions. Greenland, Panama, Canada. He has not given Britain an unambiguous, on-the-record commitment to Falklands sovereignty. Buenos Aires is watching every single exchange from this visit and measuring every silence. If this trip did not produce that explicit commitment, then the risk is that Argentine diplomatic pressure intensifies in the second half of 2025, and Britain finds itself in the extraordinary position of having just had the warmest US-UK summit in years, while simultaneously being exposed on its southern flank. History tells us that vacuums in American commitment get filled, and not by friendly parties.
Remarkable analysis from both of you, and one thing is absolutely certain tonight. Somewhere in Tehran and somewhere in Buenos Aires, someone just watched every second of that state dinner very, very carefully, and they're not smiling about what they saw.